Of Israel's allies, including the United Kingdom, have sanctioned two senior members of the Israeli government. Finance Minister Smotrich and Security Minister Ben-Gvir are accused of inciting extremist violence and serious abuses of Palestinian human rights. Both have called for the aggressive expansion of Israeli settlements in the West Bank. Smotrich says that Gaza will be entirely destroyed and that not one grain of wheat should be allowed in. That's genocidal language. And the result is an extraordinary situation in which two of Israel's top ministers are now banned from travelling to countries that Israel counts as friends and allies. The United States, Israel's oldest and most important ally, is rapidly running out of patience too. President Trump might be the only person outside of Israel who can end this war. This week he called Netanyahu to tell him that a ceasefire and a hostage deal are not enough. He expects the war to end. For today's debate, I'm joined by two very familiar contributors whose insights we value and respect. Jonathan Conricus is a former IDF spokesman and combat commander. Bassem Youssef is a satirist, a former surgeon and a figurehead of the pro-Palestinian movement. Both have spoken a lot about October the 7th and the long history of the war and indeed the conflict. So we're going to focus on what's happening now and what needs to happen next. Jonathan will go first, Bassem will respond. We'll try to give both of you equal time and a statement to respond to. So let's get into this. Jonathan Conricus, first of all, your reaction to this pretty unprecedented news that two Israeli senior ministers have effectively been sanctioned by some of Israel's closest allies.
Yeah, it puts into question if it really is a close ally. And I think I'm very disappointed. I think it is egregious. I think it's wrong. I think that decision is hypocritical. I think it is unfair and probably impossible standards that are only applied against Israel. And I think it is very unhelpful. And I think that Secretary of State Marco Rubio said the same words, very unhelpful for the UK and a few other countries to gang up against Israel and to do that. I will say that I didn't vote for either of those two ministers, and I probably don't share many of their views and definitely not their language and style of communications. But I will say that they were democratically elected and that in Israel, which is more than I can say about a lot of people and so-called leaders in the region who are not under UK sanctions, and I think that they represent what their voters feel. Now, without espousing and supporting specifically what you quoted Bezalel Smotrich saying, when it comes to humanitarian aid, I think there's a bit of irony here that he is now sanctioned after he himself, as Minister of Finance, signed the budget that pays for humanitarian aid that is now being delivered to Gazans. As far as I know, more than 14 million meals have been provided by Israel and the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation over less than 2 weeks directly to Palestinians without Hamas or their front organization UNRWA being able to touch, contaminate, control and divert the aid. And I think that is a positive development, welcome. I think that it is late in the game and we should have done it earlier. But I'm happy that it's being done now. I'm happy on two fronts because one, there is a need for food to be provided, and two, it undermines the control and the stranglehold that Hamas has over the Palestinian population.
Okay.
And I would also say under the same, just one last thing, Piers, under the category of hypocrisy, I've read so many tweets and statements by so-called humanitarians who claim to care about food and the humanitarian situation in Gaza. They are the same people who are now saying that this humanitarian effort by Israel isn't enough and that they don't support it. I wonder why they don't support it. And I think that they don't support it because it doesn't support the UNRWA mechanism that is in place, that keeps Hamas in place, and because it is perhaps the beginning of the end for Hamas. And a lot of people have a vested interest in Israel not defeating its enemy.
Okay, Bassem Youssef, your response.
You guys are talking about these two ministers as if this is the exception. I mean, like all of the Israeli cabinets have genocidal language. And Mr. Jonathan Conricus on the other side, he's like saying that they represent their constituents, which means the whole society, the whole community. is genocidal. This is what they represent. And actually, I think like we're asking the wrong question. We should be asking, like, instead of what we do, we should start asking, why are we funding this? Why is my tax money, $30 billion to date, went to Israel to buy 2,000 pounds bombs and F-35s to dump Palestinians? Why is your tax money, Piers, is going to the British government to finance this? If Israel wants to defend itself, let it defend itself by itself, not with my money. And also, like, this is like a country it's bragging that this lobby is buying off politicians in America. AIPAC is bragging about 80% of Congress being paid by them. If one politician in the EU, in Britain, in America was paid with bribed by Russian money, oh my God, you're going to have 6-month wall-to-war coverage, foreign interference, democracy, imperial corruption. But with Israel, crickets, complete radio silence. And I brought this, by the way, many times, and it was just like you flow over it, because this is the real question, right? Because you would spend 3 hours talking about if this is a proportionate response, but we'll not talk about 3 minutes. Why is my money? Why is hurricane relief funds in America are going to fund Israel? Also, like, I don't understand the relationship between America and Israel. It's like it's the most effed up situation ever. We're like the world's most pathetic sugar daddy. We give them billions of dollars and they shit on us. Like Mr. Jonathan said, now we're ganging on them. We're not helpful. Dude, we gave you $30 billion to bomb children and it's not enough for you. Like, I mean, at least when you pay a dominatrix, you know that you're getting fucked. But this is just America having a public humiliation king while getting fucked, and they call this foreign policy. They are arresting American students on American soils for protesting Israeli war crimes. What the hell, man? This is like your crack whore making you beat your children for calling her what she is, a whore. And this is what really boggles me in America. The right and the left, they fight each other tooth and nail over gun control, education, minorities' rights, healthcare, DEI. But when it comes to Israel, everybody competes to be Israel's favorite bitch. Republicans hate handouts unless it's for Israel. And Democrats, they love human rights unless it's for the Palestinians. I mean, this is a Delulu state. You guys are Delulu. You are Delulu. Like, I came here today to witness for myself how someone can lie so shamelessly. The guy is like a human pinball machine. Every question lies on him, ends on Hamas. Is like a magic 8-ball with one answer. Hamas. Yani, at least flat earthers, they make things interesting. You guys are boring. You are like the same thing. I left all of this. I left the media because of this. I come back. It's a freaking Groundhog Day. Every day, the same question, the same thing. Dude, nobody believes you. You are liars.
Okay.
Nobody believes you.
Okay. Let me just say, well, since you haven't been on media for a while, Bassem, you probably would have noticed that I've become quite unpopular, actually, with the pro-Israeli lobby, because I've been increasingly critical of Netanyahu and his government and believe they have...
Because if you're not your doormat,
That's
if you're not
entirely accurate,
they will not do it. Yeah.
Well, okay, but, you know...
Piers, that's
all right,
not
but
entirely
that's
accurate.
You may have missed that. But Jonathan Conricus, your response to what Bassem Youssef said. Dry skin, deeper wrinkles and crepiness are just a few of the visible signs of ageing. Also, I'm told. Fortunately, today's show is sponsored by One Skin. Their topical supplements are designed to help your skin feel and behave as if it's younger, a bit like this. Founded by an all-female team of scientists, One Skin is the first and only skin longevity company to target cellular skin aging with their proprietary OS1 peptide. It's scientifically proven to decrease lines and wrinkles, boost hydration, and help with thinning skin. More than 4,000 people have given 5-star reviews for their full line of face, body, sun, and travel-size products. One Skin believes that skincare is not just to improve how you look, but how to optimize skin biology at a cellular level. Well, we've teamed up to give you a 15% discount with the code PIERS, P-I-E-R-S, at checkout. Just go to oneskin.co. That's co with no M, oneskin.co.
Well, you know, I could choose to respond to many things. I could respond to your foul language. I could respond to how low you speak. I could respond to your nonsense rhetoric. And basically, I think it shows that you've been out of the business for a while because you're repeating, regurgitating a lot of stuff that's really old. I think you should update your poison. You should get an updated version of the talking points against Israel. All of the things you said they're quite low level. They're not very impressive. I've heard it a million times, and it's quite childish. It's interesting for me to hear that from an Egyptian. Last time I checked, Egypt is the second largest beneficiary of American money. And if you reportedly really care about your tax money, then have you asked yourself why the US is providing so much money to Egypt and what the US gets in return? And what I would like to know is, why is the Arab Egyptian Republic refusing to receive refugees, their Arab Muslim brothers from Gaza? And why are they so inhumane and cruel and preventing poor Gazans from escaping a war zone? Last time I checked, the only war where civilians have been prevented from leaving, escaping, fleeing a battlefield is this war. I cannot remember, and maybe you as a comedian can think of another war where civilians were prevented from a neighboring non-hostile state to flee the war. I cannot remember any such thing. And I think that the country where you come from has a lot to answer from. I know that you're more confident in bashing Israel and talking conspiracy theories and AIPAC this and that and all of the other nonsense that you regurgitated. But let's talk about Egypt. Let's talk about their responsibility. Let's talk about US funds to Egypt. Let's talk about their cruelty. Let's talk about how they have prevented humanitarian access to Gaza. Let's talk about the fact that they have built the world's biggest wall that dwarfs the Chinese wall and all Israeli security walls between Gaza and Egypt. Why did they do that? Out of Muslim compassion? Out of care for humanitarian rights of their Arab brothers? No, because they want the poor Gazans in, and because they know that programs like this one and other programs will support Hamas propaganda and will blame Israel for what's happening, when in fact Gazans should have been evacuated out of Gaza in the second or third week of the war. We would have defeated Hamas quickly and with far fewer
all right, but just to be clear, Jonathan,
casualties.
Just to be clear, programs like this one, hosted by me, which is the point you're making, I think, I'm afraid I take exception to a 3-month policy of starvation of a populace that's been relentlessly bombarded that includes so many children. That's my problem. And I think that the war aims, the stated war aims of Israel at the start of this, which was to eliminate Hamas and to get the hostages released, neither of those things have happened. All that's happening is more and more civilians are getting killed in the process of going after the Hamas terrorists. And you've taken also, as a government, to starving already impoverished children. And I just find that unconscionable, as indeed, by the way, do 2 former Israeli prime ministers who've gone on record as saying that. And there was a very powerful piece by a Jewish writer, Thomas Friedman, in today's New York Times, saying Israelis, diaspora Jewry and friends of Israel everywhere need to understand that the way Israel is fighting the war in Gaza today is laying the groundwork for a fundamental recasting of how Israel and Jews will be seen the world over. And he doesn't mean in a good way. He means in a very bad and serious and potentially dangerous way. So, yeah, this programme has evolved. It does stand for that.
Campaigning.
Well, I'm going to go to Bassem for his response. But, since you brought that up about this programme and what it represents.
10 allegations against me and I don't get to respond?
OK, well, I'm going to let Bassem respond. But that is my response to what you said. So, Bassem.
So let's. Well,
I didn't, finish making a coherent sentence.
Well, let Bassem finish first.
Okay, by all means.
So I didn't interrupt you. All right? You asked me about Egypt. I'll answer you about Egypt.
You didn't.
Egypt
and I appreciate
takes
that.
1/3 of the aid that Israel receives, while Egypt have 10 times the population. Egypt never received $30 billion to murder children and bomb hospitals. Egypt was never allowed to have the privilege of having more than 58 vetoes in the Security Council, right? And also, why doesn't Egypt take Palestinians? This is like someone going into Fifth Avenue, shooting someone in the face. And it's like, why do the neighbors don't bury the body? You're the guys doing the killing, not Egypt. So stop talking about Egypt. Anyways, and I would like to, like Jonathan and his likes, to please stop Zionizing us. Stop the Zionizing. Zionizing, it's a verb, which means to gaslight someone with such shameless, narcissistic, psychopathic audacity that you deny reality to their faces while simultaneously playing the victim, engaging in endless circle debates that go nowhere and displaying a complete loss of empathy and basic humanity, right? Remember, Piers, why the first video went viral? Because I called Israel a narcissistic, psychopathic behavior that fucks you over and then makes you think it's your fault. Because this is what Israel does. It didn't happen. And if it did, you're remembering it wrong. And if you're not, it's your fault because you're looking into my phone. Narcissists lived in their own made-up reality. They don't share your reality. They live in their own custom-made universe where facts are negotiable and truth is whatever serves them in the moment. And when it comes back and when you corner them, they throw tantrums, accusation, Hamas, anti-Semitism, full victimhood mood. And it's pointless to debate with them, right? Because take him, for example, and the likes of him. You show them a video, it didn't happen. You show them UN reports, these are lies. You mention international law, it's complicated. You get testimonies on the ground from doctors and nurses at Hamas propaganda. We saw it with our own eyes. Your optic nerve is anti-Semitic. Like Israel is like Shaggy. We saw you won the hospital. It wasn't me. We saw you killed the children. It wasn't me. Dude, your war crimes are documented. Hamas propaganda. Also, it wasn't me. There is no point of debating gaslighters. We have 4K videos, satellite imagery, and your own soldiers posting on TikTok bragging about killing children. But of course, yeah, the entire planet is having a mass hallucination, right? This is like Israel has that same credibility as a Ponzi scheme. Right? This is what I'll give you an example how Delulu is Israel, right? Israel calls itself, I mean, he was in the IDF and he tell you, the most moral army in the world. Also, they call themselves the most vegan army in the world. So Jonathan here is representing an organization that is both vegan and genocidal. Yani we will not eat chicken, but inshallah, we will bomb a hospital and barbecue it. Do you see how fucked up is this? This is like calling Jeffrey Dahmer the most vegetarian serial killer in history. Right. Okay. And this is one more thing. Does any army in the world call itself moral? This is another trait of narcissistic psychopathic behavior because they project to the world the exact opposite of who they are. If they lie, they brag about being honest. If they cheat, they brag about being faithful. And if they are cheap, they brag about being generous. And if they are criminal, genocidal, they brag about being moral, the most moral actually.
Okay. I mean, look, I would take away from that something that you and I, Jonathan, have reached agreement about, which is it remains appalling to me that international media and journalists are not allowed into Gaza to examine the veracity of all these claims from an independent perspective, because that would go a long way to answering the complaint, which is completely valid by Bassem, that every time there is any kind of incident which reflects badly on Israel, the immediate response is to shed doubt over it ever happening or to say it's Hamas propaganda or whatever. And the reason for that is because the Israeli government knows that there are no independent journalists from outside allowed in to ascertain the facts. And of course, nearly 200 Palestinian journalists have been killed by airstrikes. So there is an awful. On that, I know that Jonathan, you and I think agree about that, right? I think it would be in Israel's interest and the world's interest if they simply lifted the ban on journalists and allowed independent journalists to do their job and verify all these things that are happening. I mean, you agree, it has passed, but for millions of Americans, that's where the trouble begins. The IRS is now ramping up enforcement for those who missed the April deadline or still owe back taxes. Well, today's sponsor, Tax Network USA, can still help. If your books are a mess, if you're self-employed, or if you're a business owner, Tax Network USA specializes in cleaning up financial chaos and getting you back on track quickly. They say the IRS is applying enforcement pressure at levels they've never seen before. But even after the deadline, it's not too late to take control. The consultation is completely free. Acting now could stop penalties, threatening letters, and surprise levies before they escalate. Call 1-800-958-1000 or visit tnusa.com/peers. That's tnusa.com/peers. Let Tax Network USA make the next move, not the IRS.
Yeah, I remember having this conversation with you, and I think it was that little Canadian Jew, self-hating Jew, I forgot his name, who repeated the same lies or the same story about media. And I remember telling you, Piers, that I will personally see you in the Gaza Strip if you decide to come over, since you have been campaigning on this, and since I think that you have a point. I don't think that what you say is true. And I don't think that all of the allegations that you make, some of them are directly unfounded. But
which ones, out of interest?
Say, I think
which allegations are unfounded?
What you said in the beginning of 3 months, the last
the 3 month blockade, food and aid,
time to respond. 3 months of starvation. That is nonsense. That is absolute nonsense.
Well, you had a 3 month blockade, right? I mean, there was a amount. Well, hang on, Jonathan.
So let me explain. You asked, you did your monologue.
You say nonsense, but there was a three. You don't keep talking.
And if you'll
there
allow
was
me to
a 3 month
explain,
blockade of food and aid. You accept that?
Yeah, Piers. Listen. We both know that I cannot be in a shouting contest with your mic with this situation, so I'm not even going to try.
Of course you can. But you can't just dispute there was a.
No, I'm not.
You have to agree there was a 3 month blockade.
I will tell you what there was. There was, before that, a ceasefire which was violated by Hamas when Hamas refused to turn over hostages and to agree to the deal that was presented by the US with Egyptian and even Qatari support. Hamas refused to hand over those hostages and to continue the ceasefire. The ceasefire was ended and Israel returned to fighting. Now, during the ceasefire, Israel literally pumped the Gaza Strip with international aid. Not because we very much wanted to do so, because those were the conditions of the aid.
What happened when the ceasefire ended?
Administration.
What happened when the ceasefire ended?
And when the ceasefire ended, Israel stopped allowing that because fighting continued.
And Israel killed 300 people. It was reported the next day, Israel killed 300 people.
But here is the really important part.
I don't expect even you to try and explain they were all terrorists, right? So they killed 300 people the next day, and you launched, and the Israeli government launched a 3 month blockade of food and aid. These are simple facts.
And Israel did indeed stop providing aid to its enemy and to the population there. But it was not a tactic of starvation. Nobody is starving in Gaza. Nobody is starving in Gaza.
So why are they risking death
after the Gaza Strip was
each other to get to food?
With international aid, Piers, after the Gaza Strip was flooded with aid and when UN warehouses couldn't even meet the capacity and when truckloads were delivered from the Israeli side and weren't even taken by the UN on the other side and by their Hamas counterparts, that is when Israel said, okay, we're also going to go back to fighting and nobody is starving in Gaza. That is a complete fabrication. And if you speak about 4K evidence and all of that, Bassem mentioned a lot of nonsense, but you speak about evidence. You know how many videos I've seen of fat Gazans, of fat Hamas fighters, of overweight Gazans? Do you know how difficult it is for an Israeli to believe that Gazans are starving when I see in social media that there are open hotels, that the markets have fresh produce, and that I know the amount of food that is coming into the Gaza Strip? So allow me to question and doubt everything what you say. Ya Habibi, allow me to question and doubt everything that you say, Mr. Comedian Bassem. And because you don't have standing, you don't have knowledge, you're outdated, you're repeating. I'll give you credit for saying catchy things and sound bites. You do that very well. But in terms of actually knowing what's going on in Gaza, you have no clue. You're a complete uneducated person who is just regurgitating monologues and catchy names and popular culture at
And you
Israel,
don't think that branding Gazans a bunch of fat people who aren't starving, you think that's not a catchy little phrase
This is the
to get attention?
funniest shit I've ever heard.
I mean, come on. Really, Jonathan? You're reduced to saying that all Gazans are so overfed, they're all fat. Come on, man.
Send them treadmills and pelotons.
Piers, the only really skinny people that I've seen in Gaza, you know who they were? They were Israeli hostages that were starved by Hamas. They are the only skinny people, malnourished and tortured people that I've seen coming out of Gaza. They are the only ones that have been really malnourished. All the other ones that I've seen, and believe me, I have watched hours and hours of footage of Gaza that none of you have taken the time to watch, and I've seen a lot of healthy and some of them, yes, overweight.
To verify whether there are actually any starving people in Gaza. Why don't you, if you're so right and all the Gazans are incredibly fat, from all the extra food they've been eating.
No, that's not what I said.
You did, actually.
Piers, I didn't say that. I didn't say that. No, I didn't say that. I said that I've seen
and we can
Gazans.
analyse just how many fat people in Gaza there are who've been overfed in the last few months.
And we can analyse how many times UN organizations have weathered
the thing is, Jonathan, you can say what the hell you like, but we can't verify it, can we? You won't let journalists get in to verify it.
I'll say it now. I'll say it now a fourth time, Piers. I will invite you personally. I am inviting you personally a fourth time, and I've said it, I think 3 or 4 months ago when I was before that on your show. I said, Piers, I agree that you should be able to get access to it because you have been campaigning.
And you would let me go anywhere in Gaza, or would I have to be directed to where you want me to see?
I would accompany you and make sure that you would get access. Yes. Yeah. No, I would make sure that you get in and that you get the opportunity to speak with Palestinians. Yes.
All right.
I think that
Bassem,
you would have a good opportunity to do it.
I was promised
Bassem, your response.
I've spoken for 3 minutes or even less, and the rest he's spoken. This is unfair. Like, come on, guys.
Well, you had equal time until that last exchange where I was arguing with him. So now you can respond, Bassem.
So first of all, Israel is known. They have broken more international laws than Diddy has violated young rappers. Right? This is bullshit. Right? This is the problem with debating with pathological liars than him. It's like trying to nail jelly to the wall. It's messy, it's pointless, and everybody watching knows that you're wasting your time. Pathological liars don't argue with you. They argue to exhaust you, right? The whole point is to drag you into pointless and a maze of circular logic that you either give up or you lose your temper, right? You present evidence, they question the source. You give them the sources are biased. You show them video footage, the footage is taken out of context. You give them the context, it's complicated. For them, truth is not a destination. Truth is a moving target, right? Everything can be always debated, including gravity, right? Reality for them is another opinion. War crimes becomes allegation, genocide becomes a conflict, dead children becomes casualties in a very sad, complex situation. Words have no meaning anymore, right? So they do all of that while maintaining this calm, reasonable demeanor, like him. He has like a resting genocide face. Like, it's like crazy, right? They're here to waste time while people die. So you don't debate with pathological liars. You diagnose them, right? So because this is a problem. And also I've been hearing, I just want to ask, like, do you practice in the mirror this victim voice? Like, because you just sounded as if the most powerful nuclear power in the region are hiding under the bed like a small puppy. This is crazy. And also, let's talk about journalists. How many times Israel killed journalists? And then it's like, it didn't happen. It wasn't us. No, it was us. But it's an accident.
Let's talk about journalists, Bassem. Yeah, let's talk about journalists, by all means.
Don't interrupt me. Basha, don't interrupt me. Halas? Like, it's not us.
Let's talk about journalists, indeed. About Hamas.
Let's talk about journalists. Yeah, shut up. I didn't interrupt you. Shut the fuck up. Halas? So anyways, like, you have like
don't
journalists.
Tell me to shut the fuck up and don't use that language with me, Mr. Bassem.
And they have...
Don't use that language with me.
That language and you're killing people. Malish, I'm so sorry if my language is hurting your feeling. Again,
Malish, don't use that language with me. Try to keep it civilized. Do it for a second. Try to keep it civilized.
Civilized. Okay, Habibi, mesh. المهم. Anyways, like, let's talk about journalists. Like, let's talk about journalists. How many times they kill journalists? Right? And how many times they denied it, then say, like, it's Hamas, like, it was not us, it was a mistake. We will investigate. And let's talk about journalists back. Let's talk about Asa Winstanley, a British journalist in London. His house was raided by British police for writing and exposing Israeli war crimes, for exposing their claims on October 7th, for exposing the rape hoax. He debunked the rape hoax. He exposed the Hannibal Directive. This is a guy sitting in London talking about a foreign country, and he was raided by British police. So I want to ask everybody who cares about freedom of expression, including you, Piers, like, shouldn't you be worried that one of your nationals, a British journalist, he shares your same profession, to be raided by London police and his equipment taken away for writing about a foreign country? What does this tell you about England? What does this tell you about Israel? What does it tell you about the so-called freedom of expression in the West? Right? So this is the problem. Like, this is the problem of dealing with people. So
let me ask you a question, Bassem. Let me ask you a question, because I've given Jonathan a hard time. I think he's deserved
me a hard
it
time.
after some of the things he said. And let me give you a different type of question. The Israelis say, and have said from the start, all that has to happen is Hamas release the remaining hostages. And they have steadfastly refused to release the people that they kidnapped on October the 7th, 2023. Why don't they release the hostages? And do you condemn them for not releasing them?
You see, this is the problem.
Is that going hard on him, Piers? Really? Do you condemn Hamas? Seriously?
Your voice is annoying. Stop. Your voice
so
is
annoying. Yours, but that's okay.
Yeah, maybe.
But I manage.
I know. But you know what? People pay to come to my shows. They won't pay to come to yours. Anyways, so here's the.
I'm not going to go into a pissing contest with who's a better comedian.
Because you will lose.
You can have that title. You can be a satirican.
You will definitely lose.
All right, can you answer my question?
Okay, so here's the thing. Let's talk about credibility. Now, this is what Israel claims. Why would I believe anything that Israel says?
Piers, did you ask him a question, or is this another monologue?
Yeah, I do want an answer to the question, Bassem. I think that's only fair, right? I mean, it's a very straightforward question.
I'm telling you, this is Israel claims. Why do I believe a liar? Israel has lost its. Israel has.
Well, you don't dispute there are still hostages, do you? Or do you?
Yeah, these negotiations have fallen many times within the government because people inside the Netanyahu government didn't went through.
Yeah, but that wasn't the question I asked you.
You have testimonies from.
Yeah, but that wasn't. But hang on, Bassem, that wasn't the question I asked you. I simply said, why haven't they released the hostages? And do you?
Well, you can ask Hamas
well,
for
hang
this
on.
because I'm not a Hamas
let me
representative.
remind you. But and do you condemn Hamas for not releasing them?
Oh my God. You condemn Hamas. You could. Yes. I condemn Hamas. This is great. Even if they have hostages, even if Hamas was a vampire sucking baby's blood, what is happening there is not justifiable. You do not destroy a whole population.
That's a different question. It's a different question. Bassem, that's a different question. And I agree with you. By the way, Bassem, I agree with you. I actually agree with you. But my question is very simple. Should Hamas release the hostages, and does the fact they keep refusing to, do you condemn that? A simple question.
Yes. Well, here's the thing. Hamas have agreed to, again, I'm not a Hamas representative. I cannot speak for them. But we all know that Hamas has agreed. And Israel comes. No. Israel has sabotaged this deal many times based on testimonies from inside the Israeli government and from the family of the hostages. Israel is the one that's been sabotaging this.
But answer my questions.
I am answering your questions.
You're not.
It's not that because Israel has sabotaged.
Should they release the hostages, and do you condemn them for not releasing them?
Of course they should. Of course they should.
And do you condemn them for taking the hostages and not releasing them?
I condemn Hamas for not releasing the country, and I condemn Israel for keeping more than 25,000 hostages in Israel. Half of them is women and children, right? And I think this, again, let me go back to my point. Credibility. Israel has lied many times. You have the Prime Minister of Israel, Benjamin Netanyahu, went in front of the UN right before they bombed Lebanon. And he said every house in South Lebanon, in their kitchen, in their garage, harbors a missile for Hezbollah. If this is not comedy, what is this? How can you believe someone who said something?
Have you been to southern Lebanon?
And he said,
have you been there? Do you know anything about it? No,
of course,
don't say that. Have you been there? Do you know anything about it? Out of the three of us, I'm actually the only guy who's been there. You haven't been there. You don't know about it. I'm quite sure that you haven't seen intelligence about Hezbollah operations. And I'm quite sure that Piers hasn't either. I can tell you that I've seen it with my own eyes. Yes, I have seen tunnels underneath houses in Lebanon. I have seen houses that Hezbollah used for military purposes. And when you speak about lying, well, at least you should have something to back up your claims. You're saying nonsense. You don't know what you're talking about. You're cheap TV
talk. Can you not? Don't talk over each other, Jonathan. There's no point. Let Bassem finish and then respond. It's fine.
Shut the fuck up.
All right, finish your point, Bassem, and let Jonathan respond.
Pathological, fragile, always deeply hurt state. While doing that, they're doing that while holding the gun. Israel is what happens when you give a very advanced military to a Karen. Actually, he looks like a Karen. He looks like the male Scandinavian version of a Karen. Actually, he looks like he swallowed the Karen. But Israel is the only place where you can bulldoze a house and then sue you for scratching the tent. But dude, everybody knows that you're lying. Your neighbor knows that you're lying. Your barista knows you're lying. Even your GPS avoids your house because of this thing that comes from your vicinity. Everybody knows you're lying.
Well, I would say this. All right, let me jump in.
Pathologically lying.
Okay,
state.
let me put it this way. You know what, Jonathan? You're perfectly entitled to not care what I think about any of this or what Bassem Youssef has to say about it, because obviously he has passionate views on the other side of this. And I've changed my views, as you know. I've said this to you very clearly. But I'm not the only one. What would concern me right now, if I was Israeli or Jewish, actually, is if I read Thomas Friedman's column, which was very powerful, and I urge people to read it today on the New York Times website. If I saw that the UK, Australia, Norway, Canada, New Zealand have sanctioned 2 members of the Israeli government for repeated incitements of violence against Palestinian communities, if 2 former prime ministers, one, Ehud Olmert, said enough is enough, Israel's committing war crimes. Ehud Barak, choosing a war of deception, would write a new chapter in the March of Folly. The war is a misleading smokescreen that purports to be a campaign for the country's security and future, while in actuality it's a political war. You've got your own former prime ministers, you've got Jewish columnists, you've got 5 allies, and they're all being increasingly critical of what this Israeli government is doing. Why does that not concern you?
So let's address that. First, let's characterize the countries that are part of that. Norway is not an ally. Norway has been really the tip of the most extreme part in Europe,
Let's take the UK.
propagating
Take
for a
my
Palestinian
country.
state
Take my
at all
country.
costs. Yeah, I will. And as I said in the beginning, I am indeed worried. I'm saddened by it. I think that it is a wrong decision. And I regret that that is what the UK has decided to be the policy that the UK is
You know why they're
driving.
doing it, don't
and
you,
I think
Jonathan?
it's regrettable.
They're doing it because Smodrich and Ben-Gvir have made no secret through their publicly stated comments that they want to kick all the Palestinians out of Gaza. They're also endorsing endless new illegal settlements on the West Bank. This is genocidal language that they're talking. That's why these actions have been taken. And I don't believe, Jonathan, having interviewed you many... Hang on, let me ask a question. Having interviewed you many times since the start of the war, I do not believe that you have anything in common with these people. I just think you instinctively know what they're saying and what they are planning to do is wrong.
So let me say this. As I said in the beginning, and I've been clear about it, I didn't vote for, and I probably don't support them in much of what they say, not in content and not in the way that they say it. I don't think that everything that these 2 ministers, these elected officials say is wrong, but I do think that many of their statements have been tasteless, have been wrong, and have been unhelpful. Now, what I am concerned with a lot, really a lot, is what we spoke about the last conversation when you had Ehud Olmert on. You asked him one semi-serious question about the war crimes allegations. He didn't back it up because he doesn't have anything to back it up with. He was just there for the headlines, and for the attention, and because he has a grudge against Bibi, and because he also has a lot of criticism against him. That is fine, and that's part of the Israeli political debate and environment, and that is usually what happens in democracies when people have the ability to say what they think and they have the freedom to do so. By the way, Arabs have it as well in Israel, unlike in most other countries in the Middle East. However, what I would say is also very worrying, and I think relevant to this program and to many other programs, is how easily Hamas propaganda and anti-Semitism are platformed, and what the consequences of journalists. A few questions ago, you started speaking about journalists. I would like to address the issue of the responsibility of journalists when they report from the field. I would like to address the responsibility
They're not allowed in the field.
Of the New York Times. They are in the field. They are in the field. They have people in the field, and they have people
How many
in
international
Jerusalem,
journalists are currently in Gaza?
And
How many international journalists are currently operating freely in Gaza?
Why would you diminish the importance of Palestinian journalists
I
in Gaza?
asked you how many international
Why would you
journalists...
unqualify them?
You killed them.
I didn't.
You killed them.
I said, how many international journalists are in Gaza? Answer,
you can see
no,
who is reporting.
Nada.
Yeah, you can see who is reporting. All of the major networks are reporting from Gaza.
If you don't like the reporting from Gaza, then let international journalists in. But you won't. And there's only one reason you won't. Because you don't want journalists. You don't want journalists to actually report what's happening. You would rather smear all Palestinian journalists
and
as
we
Hamas.
are in agreement. Piers, we have covered it, and I have already said that we are in agreement that you and I have said to Israeli counterparts of media that I think we should allow journalists in. We have said that, and I think you don't need to use it every time I start to make an argument of something that is remotely
and
inconvenient.
you keep questioning the integrity of Palestinian journalists who are getting killed in large numbers, record numbers, in fact, but you won't let the international journalists in.
And I will continue to do that, Piers. Yes, and I will continue to question the veracity.
But that's very easy to do, isn't it? So easy to smear Palestinian journalists who are dying in large numbers because you won't let any other journalists in. So you say all the ones that are there are pro-Hamas.
Piers,
you smear
there is a
them all.
lot of reporting from Gaza. There is a lot of reporting from Gaza, and really, I think, it's fine that you have a point to make, but you cannot say that every time I open my mouth and I speak about press coverage or falsifying reality or repeating Hamas propaganda, that cannot be the answer that you use each and every time that I make a point about reporting.
Actually, it can.
And responsibility
because it's
of
one
journalists
way.
and editors.
It is
no,
actually, I
it
can.
cannot be.
I can,
it cannot
Jonathan.
be,
I'll tell you why I can.
No, it cannot
Let
be.
me answer.
No,
I'll tell you why I can.
You can do everything.
I'll tell you why I can.
But at the end of the day, I think responsibility goes both ways.
Let me answer you.
Yeah,
let me answer
but responsibility as a journalist also
Stop
goes
talking
both
and
ways.
let me answer you. Right? This is the reason I can.
By all means, Piers.
Because ultimately we've got to a place in this war where Israel denies or cast out over anything that happens which reflects negatively on the IDF or the Israeli government. Anything. It's all just dismissed as it didn't happen like that.
That's also
we'll launch an
That's
internal
not
investigation
true,
ourselves.
If we're honest,
blah, blah, blah.
that's not true.
And so the overriding answer to all of that problem, to all of that, to get to the truth, to get to the bottom of it, is let the international journalists in. So I will keep saying it until it happens. I know you agree with me. I know you agree with me,
Piers.
but you agreeing with me doesn't make it change.
Yeah. Okay, well, yeah. As I said, you can keep on saying it, but I would keep on saying that I think journalists and editors have responsibility for the lies that they spread and for the anti-Semitism that they help flame. And I think that we see that. Jews, when you speak, you expressed concern and you asked me how I feel as an Israeli and as a Jew about what people say and about the situation. I am concerned, without even a drop of cynicism, about what you said. And I think those are serious issues that this government needs to answer for. But I will also say that I am very concerned with the ease and with the negligence that I see journalists and people with access to microphones, how they just spread falsehoods, libels, and lies about Israel and about Jews. And I see the real world consequences of what happens when Islamists and Palestinian supporters and Hamas supporters and all of the other bad apples that have embedded themselves in Western society are allowed to take the streets in London.
I'm going to get a Bassem.
Take the streets in New York.
I'm going to get a Bassem to respond, but I would just say on that point, I myself have seen in the last 2 weeks that if you dare to criticize the Israeli government in a way that almost everybody is now doing, by the way, whether it's former Israeli prime ministers, whether it's allies of the country, you name it, people are queuing up to criticize the Israeli government. But when I did it, despite having defended Israel's right to defend itself for many, many months, as Bassem knows, we argued about it, that I was immediately accused of being a Jew hater and an anti-Semite. It is a deliberate campaign.
Piers, that's not accurate.
It was a deliberate campaign to shut me up. It was a deliberate campaign to stop me criticising the Israeli government by branding me a Jew-hating anti-Semite, which anyone who's watched this show from the start of this war knows is complete nonsense. Right, Bassem, your final word
Piers,
to this.
That's not truthful.
Well, it is true.
Piers,
I read it every second on social media. I saw myself being accused of being a Jew-hating anti-Semite.
The criticism against you was, Piers, you know that the criticism against you wasn't because you have criticism against Israel. It was because how you spoke to Natasha, the tone and the demeanor. It wasn't the content of what you said.
Which I make no apology for, by the way.
How you spoke.
She is a barrister for a group called Lawyers for Israel. She's not an impartial horse in the race. She's supposed to be an international barrister. If she can't take tough questions or being challenged or being interrupted by a journalist, she's in the wrong job. Right, Bassem, your response to Jonathan to round off. Bassem will now be allowed to speak without interruption to finish the debate. Bassem.
First of all, Piers, welcome to the behavior of narcissistic psychopath. They love bomb you, and then when you make a single criticism about them, they go all flip like bad shit on you. Welcome, Habibi. Also, like Jonathan, like overuses the word anti-Semitism so much, it's like a used condom at this point. You know, completely stretched out, lost all its protection, and nobody wants to touch it anymore. Jonathan uses Hamas more like a crackhead uses excuses. Right? And let me tell you about like things from the ground. I'm coming to London, by the way, 19th of July. There is a big concert called Voices for Solidarity. They are organized by health workers for Palestine, right? These are people that were on the ground and they saw with their own eyes and they have testimony. I would love you to actually host some of them. So if you want people from the ground, so they tell. But of course, it's going to be like Hamas propaganda and all of that. And also, like what's like really have been bothering me about all of this is the reset. It's as if the media is living its own Groundhog Day. Everything resets, right? Like Western media has the attention of a TikTok algorithm. Every discussion starts from zero. Every crime exists in a vacuum. Every pattern is like coincidence. Like, oh my God, those Israelis there had really bad luck with these accidental hospital bombing. What the hell? 40 hospitals bombed, and we discuss 41 as it's a new development. Right? It's like covering a serial killer, new 20th victim without checking the 19 victims in the freezer. This is not covering the story. This is covering up the story. And here's the thing. Nobody believes you, Israel. Nobody believes you. Nobody likes you. No matter how much media covers for you, no matter how much politicians you buy to parrot your talking points, no matter how many fake influencer you hire to whitewash your face, no matter how many fake Indian-based accounts that tweets for you, no matter how many European models you bring in and you pay them so they can dance with the IDF uniform, right? That everybody can see you, everybody can smell your bullshit, right? You are like the neighbor who firebombs everybody's house and he's sad why he's not invited to a house party, right? You will win in the battlefield. You will get more land. Because America supports you. It's like supporting a rabid dog that shits on your lawns and eats your cats and bites everybody. And it's like, oh, you just like have a bad day. You will win, maybe, on the battlefield. But everybody knows who you are. A bunch of heartless, psychopathic, demonic assholes. And that's, I don't have anything to say.
Okay. Is that the end of the debate, Piers? That's the final statement of this.
If you want to have a final word very quickly, by all means.
I'll try to say something positive. You know, despite that very foul language and what he just said, I will gladly invite you and your grandchildren to come visit Israel in 70 years. Maybe you and I won't be here, but maybe our grandchildren will. They will come to see a flourishing, democratic, free, prosperous society that despite the actions of the people like you, despite our enemies, despite naysayers, despite haters and many other people, they will see that we will continue to live in our ancestral homeland. We will continue to nourish it and love it, and we will continue to prosper and live here despite people like you.
All right, but I would also like in 70 years' time to see exactly the same for the people in Gaza who are Palestinians. And
that's their choice.
And that has been
their choice.
Okay,
they can have it.
I would like to see that.
Choice.
I would like to see that kind of utopia for them as well.
So would I.
And for them to enjoy the same human rights that you and I enjoy. I've got to leave it there.
So would I, but that's their choice.
All right, we've got to leave it there. Jonathan, you had a good amount of time to speak, as did Bassem. Thank you both very much.